As you may have heard, Vertex AI is no more. Vertex AI has been replaced by Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. And this was announced less than a couple of weeks ago at the Google Cloud Next conference. This video is going to cover what changed, the features of Agent Platform, my thoughts on what this all means, and a useful framework for understanding where Agent Platform fits into the agents landscape, and therefore help you decide whether you should be learning it. Vertex AI was Google's end-to-end MLOps platform, ML development platform, model development platform. And until now, Google's approach to generative AI and AI agents was to integrate generative AI tools and products into Vertex AI. And now it's kind of the other way around. So instead, Vertex AI's features, including Model Garden, custom training, AutoML, model registry, endpoints, pipelines, everything else that we're used to in Vertex AI, are now rebranded and subsumed under a new service in GCP called Agent Platform. The full name is actually Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. So literally, when you go to Google Cloud Console now, you cannot go to Vertex AI. If I type in Vertex AI, I see this result here, which is Vertex AI, but in parentheses, Agent Platform. And when I click on that, it takes me to Agent Platform, nothing called Vertex AI. And within Agent Platform, you can see that most of the previous Vertex AI features are under the models menu, submenu. So we've got model garden, tuning, evaluation, model registry, Vertex AI datasets, or what was previously Vertex AI datasets, now just called datasets. Pretty much everything that we saw in Vertex AI, which pertained to models in general and not just agents, is now under this models menu under Agent Platform. All right. And meanwhile, under the agents submenu, we have a lot of things that were previously under the Vertex AI Agent Builder menu in Vertex AI. So again, previously it was kind of Vertex AI is the platform for anything models and AI. And within that, we've got like an agents submenu. And now it's an agent first, agent forward approach. And Vertex AI features that were previously under Vertex AI for just models in general are now subsumed under this platform that's literally called Agent Platform. So just kind of going through this real quick, we've got build submenu, scale, govern, and optimize submenu. I think this was kind of how they talked about a lot of different things at Google Cloud Next, actually. Build, scale, govern, optimize. And under build, we've got Agent Garden, ADK, MCP servers, RAG engine, vector search, and search. Agent Garden is basically like Model Garden, but for agents. You've got kind of pre-built agents and templates for agents that you can use. I'm going to just click into each of these. So it's basically like Model Garden, but for agents. The ADK is Google's open source framework for building agents programmatically, and it is model agnostic. MCP servers are basically managed MCP servers that are using Cloud API Registry under the hood. As well as I think you can create your own custom MCP servers from APIs as well. That was previously available in the Vertex AI Agent Builder menu for sure. Then we've got RAG engine, vector search, and search, which are different solutions for RAG. And each of them just differs in terms of how much control you have or how abstracted away the infrastructure is for you. So those are familiar, or at least familiar for anyone who was using Agent Builder before in Vertex AI. We've got the scale submenu as well. Agent engine and agent runtime is now under this deployments tab. We've got memory bank and sessions, which are kind of related to each other. Sessions are, the individual conversations or interactions that you have with an agent. And then memory bank basically allows agents to create an entire context out of many sessions for a given user, right? So it kind of stores that. So then an agent can have a history of sessions for a given user. Under govern, we've got agent registry. We've got policies, gateways, security. So agent registry is like model registry, but for agents. So it's how you track and store your various agents that you've built. Policies is new, I believe. Yeah, these are the rules that you can set to govern your agents. You can mitigate risks and ensure compliance this way. Gateways provide secure and unified connectivity between agents and tools across supposedly any environment while enforcing security policies. And then security, the security feature, I don't think was in the previous version under Vertex AI. But based on the docs, it's basically a combination of agent identity plus model armor and threat scanning. So I'll have to look into this a bit more, but agent identity gives each agent a unique cryptographic ID. And so then you have an auditable trail for every action that it takes. And then you also have real-time threat detection and vulnerability scanning specific to agent systems on top of that. You know, I know that sounds a bit vague right now. I think this is newer, but they're really trying to, I think, push the fact that you can create more secure agents taking this approach of agent platform, or like a hyperscaler approach, rather than some of the other approaches to agents, to building agents, which we'll talk about later in this video as well. And then at the bottom, we have the optimize submenu, which has topology and evaluation. So topology is a visual map of how agents and tools and infrastructure connect to each other. Obviously, there's nothing here right now, but it's pretty new for agents. But it was built on top of App Hub, which has been around for some time. So they repurposed App Hub for agents, is my understanding. And then we have evaluation, which is truly unique to, I'm not going to say agent platform, but it's the kind of thing that you probably wouldn't get, or at least not as easily, in some of these other approaches to building agents, like Claude managed agents, for example. Evaluation lets you test agents against simulations and synthetic user interactions in a controlled environment, right? So you can define metrics here, and you can also have online monitors, which continuously scores your agents against live traffic as well. So you can kind of see how it's performing or how its performance changes over time, almost like model monitoring, but for agents. And it allows you to debug reasoning paths as well. So if you're opening up Agent Platform for the first time, I also want to talk about this. Especially in a new project, you'll be prompted to enable a bunch of APIs that allow everything in the platform to work. I have already enabled these APIs. You can see the list up here. And it's a pretty long list. And I think it's actually kind of interesting to go through because it sort of gives you a window into how Agent Platform is like built under the hood, or what it's really doing. I'm not going to go through all of these. But, you know, we've got AI platform.googleapis.com, which is, it's kind of funny. It was, you know, the platform name for Vertex AI, and Vertex AI was renamed from AI platform. And now, you know, all of this is agent platform. So there's been kind of two iterations of names, or two changes. And the API itself is still, the main API is still AIplatform.googleapis.com. Not that it's a bad thing, not that they need to change it, but I just think it's funny and kind of amusing and indicative of how often the name has changed. We've got compute.googleapis.com, the IAM API, the cloud storage API, you know, so it's using those kind of bread and butter APIs under the hood. Let's see what else. Notebooks API, that's necessary for Colab Enterprise and Workbench, which are over here. Yeah, so notebooks you can access in its own submenu. I should also mention actually Studio is its own tab. So this is Agent Studio. And this is the no-code drag and drop agent builder, basically. I don't think this is very reliable right now. That's kind of one of the reasons I didn't mention it, actually. But I think they have it in this at the top of the menu and not under the agents submenu, because Studio is, I think, the most accessible way, or will be the most accessible way for people to build agents on here, because it is no code, right? So I think they're hoping that they get a lot more people to build agents because of Agent Studio, even though it's not very performant or reliable right now. And that's why they have it, at the top of the menu. But I don't really think it's reliable at this point. Let's see. In terms of the other APIs, just a couple others I want to point out. So they've got the Cloud API registry.googleapis.com API, that spoke to the fact that this is the API that they're really using for MCP servers, for the MCP servers feature under the agents submenu. So, it can be kind of interesting to, go through this and just see like, okay, this is really actually how they're building the API, the platform using these APIs. They've got text to speech, for example, that has to be for voice agents. There's kind of no other explanation. So I kind of suggest going through this. I'll probably post as well, like a write-up of this video that you can read through and get more information about what each of these APIs is. So now I'm going to share some thoughts on what this all means. And then I'm going to go through a framework for understanding how Agent Platform compares to other ways of building agents, so you can decide whether or not learning it is right for you. I do plan to put out more and more content about Agent Platform. I think it is going to be one of the best platforms out there for building agents, again, for specific kind of use cases or careers, which I'll talk about in a second. But right now, I'll talk about what my thoughts are on just like this as a decision that Google made, right? So honestly, I think it's a pretty bold move to make everything related to AI development on GCP agent first, or at least like subsumed under this platform that they're calling Agent Platform. The models part, which is where you would train your own AI models, whether they be generative AI models, classical statistical AI models, or deep learning models, is a subsection of Agent Platform and not the other way around now, right? So conceptually, to me, it feels a little backwards. And I love GCP. I am obviously, spending all of my time teaching GCP these days. But frankly, it feels a little backwards to me. I'll still obviously learn as much as I can about the platform and accept the way that they're doing this. But like, agents are a type of AI, and a supervised model, for example, that you build on Agent Platform under the models menu, like an XGBoost model or an image classifier, is not a type of agent. So I don't know why they would put that under a platform called Agent Platform. I don't like that personally. I'm not sure how it makes sense for Google to put everything under a platform called Agent Platform, rather than have agents be part of a larger AI platform that also does other AI things. It also seems a little bit risky, because if agents specifically do not become ubiquitous and they're kind of a hype, they're part of like a hype cycle where, they're going to be replaced or at least like graduate into some other like form of AI, it feels a little bit risky for Google to be making everything about agents. Google will have to backtrack or awkwardly maintain a platform name or focus that is kind of incongruous with the direction of the AI agency at this hypothetical future time. Like think about big data, for example, or data science. Like, these are terms that it's not that they entirely went away, but they sort of got replaced or became less of the focus of their respective industries. Like, data science became more like data engineering and ML engineering and data analysis rather than like this catch-all term for anything related to cleaning and extracting value out of data, right? And big data as a term kind of went away as well. Obviously, it's still useful as a concept to think about the use cases for data, sometimes involving a lot of volume of data and velocity of data. But people don't really use the term big data as much anymore. So imagine if they had like a platform, called Big Data, platform that had like all of their data services under it. And it would just kind of be out of date after a certain point. Although arguably they did that with Bigtable and BigQuery. My point is that we don't really know how agents are gonna go. They may be the first step in a long evolution of AI tools. And I don't really know what Google's thinking was behind creating Agent Platform, but I think what it means, if I were to take a guess, I can only infer that Google truly does believe that agents are the future. I think that's a little bit of a risky bet because agents are just, they are LLMs plus tools plus a loop that allows them to keep accessing tools until they no longer need them. And not that they are simple to build, but conceptually that is what they are. And so imagine if LLMs get replaced by other like more modular architectures that aren't necessarily models that receive a bunch of text and output a bunch of text. Maybe different types of models become more popular than LLMs. What would happen to agents? I don't know. We have not fully discovered the limitations of agents. We haven't fully discovered the extent of their applications. But Google is betting on agents by making their entire AI platform focused on agents, at least for now. So on the one hand, I feel a little skeptical, I guess, of this decision. And I think part of it might be the fact that I just got used to Vertex AI as a platform. But on the other hand, you could take it as a sign that agents really are worth learning. And Google has done, whatever kind of research or internal discussion that they've had about where things are going to go and how they can best support their customers, and decided that this agent-first approach, is really what makes the most sense as a future-proof way of making AI services available to their customers. So if you take that as kind of an arbinger of what's to come, then the signal is you should be learning agents, right? That is only a decision that you can make. But if that is something you think you want to do, I think it's useful to understand as well how Agent Platform compares to other ways of building and deploying agents right now, because there's a lot out there. So I've just kind of written this up, and I'm going to sort of read through it, not in a way that's very robotic or rote, hopefully, but I had to kind of flesh out my thoughts in written form. I think there are a few different stacks for building and deploying agents. And so I'm going to categorize the different stacks and talk about where Agent Platform fits in. There are lots of tools and platforms out there. As you know, it can be difficult to know where to start or which opportunities you're setting yourself up for if you learn one or another. So I think this framework is a useful way to think about the different types of agents, agent stacks, and approaches to building AI agents. In fact, I almost forgot. I have a little drawing here of the different paths to building agents, right? So the first path is what I'm calling the Hyperscaler stack or the Hyperscaler path. And Agent Platform is part of this, right? You may have heard the term Hyperscaler thrown around before. It refers to one of the very large cloud providers that operates data centers at a massive scale globally. It is typically shorthand for AWS, Azure, and GCP, sometimes also extended to include Oracle or Alibaba Cloud. accordingly, the hyperscaler stack or path to building agents in the context of agent platforms refers to the platform that is offered by one of these companies as part of their broader cloud services, okay, rather than a standalone product. So Agent Platform, which we've been going over, is one of them. But you've also got AWS Bedrock with Agent Core and also Microsoft Foundry, which I believe is their agent platform. And Agent Platform is a hyperscaler stack because it is a feature of Google Cloud and not a separate company's product, right? So that's why I'm calling this kind of the hyperscaler path. And the way this workflow would work for each hyperscaler stack is pretty consistent. You build the agent in the cloud's respective SDK. You deploy it to the cloud's managed runtime. In the case of Agent Platform, that's Agent Runtime or Agent Engine, which is now under the Deployment tab. And you rely on that same cloud for memory, agent tools, governance, observability, right? That's all integrated and baked in. Data integration as well is native to the cloud's data services, assuming that you have the data stored elsewhere on their platform. And so the stack optimizes for production scale, okay? That's how I would think about it. It optimizes for enterprise governance, deep data integration, compliance, and what you sacrifice in return is some multi-cloud flexibility and speed, especially for simple use cases. Like it's just more effortful to create like a prototype, for example, even though I still think they're pretty accessible. If you're going to use the ADK, for example, you do have to write code or at least get help writing code with a coding agent like Gemini CLI or Claude Code or something like that. So the trade-off here is speed, and this approach is probably slower to adopt new frontier features, and it creates some friction for small teams who don't feel like they need the governance that this approach offers. The likely customers here, in the long term at least, are enterprise IT teams with many agents that touch real data, and they need auditability, audit trails, governance, that kind of thing. Now we've got the second path, which is the model vendor stack. The model vendor stack I would call the full agent platform that is offered by a foundation model company. So we've got Anthropic, Claude here, and OpenAI. And these are very popular and they are accessible because they optimize for developer speed. So you build the agent in the model vendor's SDK, you deploy it to the vendor's managed runtime and rely on the vendor for memory. So Claude managed agents, you don't even really use the Claude SDK. You basically use like a YAML file, I think. And you can have Claude build and deploy other Claude agents. So it's very fast. And that's why a lot of people are gravitating toward this. It optimizes for speed to ship, clean developer experience, minimal infrastructure overhead. You're using Anthropic's and OpenAI's, in this case, their infrastructure, right? Their managed infrastructure. That's why it's called Claude Managed Agents, for example. But what you give up is model flexibility, since you're locked into their models. You give up enterprise integration, governance, features like identity propagation, which you would get with one of the hyperscalers. You give up that level of control in those features. A major trade-off is vendor lock-in. You are a tenant in the vendor's environment, and switching would require effort. Not that it doesn't require effort to go from like one cloud to another, but you can, for example, easily change models on Agent Platform because you don't have to use Gemini, right? The ADK, for example, allows you to use other models. So if the costs aren't working for you anymore, or just where they take the features isn't working for you anymore, or you can't get the scale that you need from how they're hosting your agents, then it can feel like you're locked in. And then we've got path 3, which is kind of the open source path. I've got LangChain and Crew AI here. This is kind of the do-it-yourself approach to building an agent platform where you assemble the pieces yourself from open source frameworks and infrastructure of your choosing. So you basically take the framework and you put it on the infrastructure that you want. right? So this could be Cloud Run, Kubernetes, Postgres, Langsmith, for example. That could be kind of your stack with this. Crew AI is, I think, less commonly used than LangChain, but it deserves mention under this category. The thing that this is optimizing for is flexibility, right? You can port it to whatever cloud you want. You have no vendor lock-in. It gives up everything that comes managed in the other stacks, which can be very convenient. But the trade-off is that you have more engineering to do, right? You have more effort to do in terms of engineering. So the likely customer here is engineering-heavy teams that want full control. Then we've got path 4 over here, which is workflow automation. And I think this actually kind of falls into a similar category as path 2. Like I'm seeing a lot of people on YouTube who teach this stuff, teach kind of a combination of Claude managed agents and one of these tools like Inaden or Make. And essentially these are drag and drop or no code tools for creating automation flows where the agent is it's one node. The agent is one node in an automation. It's not even doing, everything. This includes the various SaaS integration tools with AI agent capabilities layered on top, right? So you might have used Zapier before. Zapier kind of has this, and these tools are very similar in this respect. A lot of these tutorials online have blown up because these tools are so accessible, but I think it's important to understand how these differ from the Hyperscaler approach and the other approaches aforementioned in this video. The workflow is visual. It's low code or no code. You drag and drop a visual workflow, then you drop in an AI agent node, and you configure tools through these pre-built SaaS integrations. And you just activate the workflow. So you're not managing the infrastructure at all. You're also not writing code. But there are limitations here, right? It gives up the identity, retrieval, evaluation, governance that is often needed for running agents in production in any serious way or, for any enterprise use case. So the risk here is brittleness and fragility when the logic requires reasoning over structure rather than just chaining steps. And agents that need to plan, branch, or reason across many tool calls can easily hit the ceiling of tool calls or not be able to be as flexible because of the drag and drop workflow automation approach. Whereas if you're using the ADK, for example, you can pretty much bake in whatever logic you need for the agent before you deploy it on agent runtime. So I think the people who are using this and probably will in the future are like freelance automation or automation freelancers, ops and marketing teams that are automating SaaS workflows and need a more convenient way to do that. And they're not very technical. Small businesses or solo operators, these are the people who are kind of using these at this point. The use case here is more like a trigger fires, do these steps rather than deploy a long-running agent over enterprise data with context, memory of your previous sessions, that kind of thing. So I think the best way to think about how these differ, or at least the most convenient way to think about how these differ, is that each of them kind of prioritizes and gives up some subset of this list: speed, control, and governance, right? So they basically choose which is most important and which do you give up. So the Hyperscaler approach basically prioritizes governance and control to give up some speed, even though, again, I don't think it's like that. It's that much more inaccessible, but it does take a little bit more effort and time to build and deploy agents using this approach compared to some of the others. The model vendor approach picks speed and control, at least in terms of developer experience, and they give up governance. The open source approach picks control and speed and gives up governance. And in fact, you have even more control than the model vendor approach, even though I still think that they're prioritizing these two over governance. And then workflow automation picks speed for non-developers, and then arguably gives up both governance and control. Not because you don't have any control, but because just compared to the others, you don't have as much control, especially at scale. So the hyperscaler stack is where Agent Platform is. And I would say it's for enterprises who already have data in the cloud or data that will live in the cloud. They want complete governance and scalability. They want an agent platform where their data already exists. The model vendor stack is for product teams that are shipping fast or solo operators. The open source stack is for engineers that want full control and flexibility. And the workflow automation stack is for non-developers automating SaaS work or automation freelancers, for example. So a question worth asking yourself is, where do you want to be, right? Does it feel right to you to be focused more on these tools that are more accessible? Do you want to be an automation freelancer? Do you want to be working with small businesses? Do you want to kind of develop your own agency that integrates AI into other small businesses? Do you want to be part of an engineering team that learns an open source tool that you can really take to any infrastructure environment? Or do you want to be working on an established cloud platform where a lot of the enterprises are going to be already and have deep integration into, and therefore, they're going to want to use the corresponding, agent platform of that cloud service provider in order to best build agents with the tools and data that they're already using. So I think a good bet is the hyperscaler stack and learning something like Agent Platform, because that is where the production agent workloads of the coming years, maybe the next 5 to 10 years, if agents continue to be a thing, that's where they're going to live. And the people who understand how to build, govern, and operate agents inside of these environments are the ones that enterprises will actually pay a lot of money to hire. So I'm planning to put out more content about Agent Platform, Gemini Enterprise Agent Platform. There's a lot of new stuff to learn here. So I'm going to be spending a lot of time researching it and putting out tutorials. So if you are interested in learning with me, then don't forget to comment and subscribe. Thanks so much for your time today.